नास्त्यन्तो विस्तरस्य मे अहमात्मा गुडाकेशः सर्वभूताक्षयस्थितः अहम् आदिश्च मध्यं च भूतानामन्त एव च आदित्यानाम् अहं विष्णुः ज्योतिषां रविरंशुमान् मरीचिर्मरुताम् अस्मि नक्षत्राणाम् अहं शशि वेदानां सामवेदोऽस्मि देवानामस्मि नक्षत्राणाम् अहं शशि वेदानां सामवेदोऽस्मि देवानामस्मि नक्षत्राणाम् अहं शशि वेदानेषु यक्षरक्षसाम्
वसूनां पावकश्चास्मि मेरुशिखरिणामहं पुरोधसां च मुख्यानां वेत्ते पार्थ बृहस्पतिं सेनानीनाम् अहं स्कन्दः शरसामस्मि सागरः महर्षीणां दूरहं गिरामस्मेकमक्षरम् यज्ञानां जपयज्ञोऽस्मि स्थावराणां हिमालयः अश्वत्थः सर्ववृक्षाणां
देवर्षीणां च नारदः गन्धर्वाणां
चित्ररथः
सिद्धानां कपिलो मुनिः उच्चैश्रवसमस्वानां विद्धि माममृतोद्भवम् ऐरावतं गजेन्द्राणां नराणां च नराधिपम् आयुधानाम् अहं वज्रम् धेनूनाम् अस्मि कामधुक् प्रजनश्चास्मि कन्दर्पः सर्पाणामस्मि वासुकिः अनन्तश्चास्मि नागानां वरुणो यादसामहम् पितॄणामर्यमा चास्मि यमः संयमतामहम् प्रह्लादश्चास्मि दैत्यानां कालकलयतामहम् मृगाणां च मृगेन्द्रोऽहम् वैनतेयश्च पक्षिणां पवनपवतामस्मि शस्त्रभृतामहम् मकरश्चास्मि स्रोतसामस्मि जाह्नवी सर्गाणामादिरन्तश्च मध्यं चैवाहमर्जुन अध्यात्मविद्या विद्यानां वादप्रवदतामहम् अक्षराणां मकारोऽस्मि द्वन्द्वसामासिकस्य च अहमेवाक्षयः दाताहं विश्वतो मुखः मृत्युः सर्वहरश्चाहम् उद्भवश्च भविष्यताम् कीर्तिश्रीवाक्च नारीणां स्मृतिर्मेधा धृतिक्षमा सामतथा साम्ना गायत्री छन्दसामहम् मासानां मार्गशीर्षोऽहम् ऋतूनां कुसुमाकरः द्यूतं चलयतामस्मि
तेजस्तेजस्विनामहं जयोऽस्मि व्यवसायोऽस्मि सत्त्वं सत्त्ववतामहं ऋषीणां वासुदेवोऽस्मि पाण्डवानां धनञ्जयः मुनीनामप्यहं व्यासः गन्धो रमयतामस्मि नीतिरस्मि जिगीषताम्
मौनं चैवास्मि गुह्यानां
ज्ञानं ज्ञानवतामहं
यच्चापि सर्वभूतानां बीजं तदहमर्जुन न तदस्ति विना यस्य
maya bhutam characharam
नान्दोऽस्ति मम दिव्यानां विभूतीनां परन्तप येष रुद्रेशतः प्रोक्तः विभूते विस्तरो मया यद्यद्विभूतिमत्सत्त्वं
श्रीमद्पूर्जितमेव
तत्तदेवावगच्छन्त्वं मम तेजोषसम्भवम् अथवा बहुनैतेन किं ज्ञातेन तवार्जुन विष्टव्याहमहमिदं
कृष्णम्
एकांशेन स्थितो जगत् ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे विभूतियोगो नाम दशमोऽध्यायः सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः.
You're making some mistakes in some places, isn't it?
The last few.
Yeah, I think so. Last two.
Okay.
Last two, isn't it?
Yeah.
41 and 42.
So we'll do a lead and follow on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to change the Shruti. Your Shruti is
It's
so
so low,
low.
isn't
I just
it?
can't even say it. So I start with a higher one and Yogniji puts me
No,
down.
but
It's
no, the
like-
thing is, I think we all have been practicing it in a slow way so that everybody can chant it. That's
Yeah.
it. And you are not
But
there to
it's
lift us up. So it's been
Okay.
going down, 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 down.
Yedyat vibhuti matsatvam
Yadvibhutimatsatvam
Srimad Purjita me bhava
Srimad-urjitameva
Yedyat vibhuti matsatvam
Yadvibhutimatsatvam
Srimad Purjita me bhava
Srimad-urjitameva
Tat tat deva tat Tattadevavagachatvam
Tattadevavagachatvam
Mama tejosha sambhavam
Mama tejosha sambhavam
Tattadevavagachatvam
Tattadevavagachatvam
Mama tejosha sambhavam
Mama tejosha sambhavam
Together.
Yatya vibhutimatsatvam Srimad-urjitameva Tattadevavagachatvam Mama tejosha sambhavam
Atava bahunaitatena
Athava bahutena
Kim jnatena tavarjuna
Kim jnatena tavarjuna
Atava bahunaitena
Athava bahunetena
Kim jnatena tavarjuna
Kim jnatena tavarjuna
Vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam
Vishtabhyamidam krishnam
Ekam shena stito jagat
Ekamshena sthito jagata
Vishtabhyaham kritsnam
Vishtabhyamidam krishnam
Ekam shena stito jagat
Ekamshena sthito jagata
Together.
Athava bahunetena Kim jnatena tavarjuna Vishtabhyamidam krishnam Ekamshena sthito jagata.
Much better.
We'll
start with the prayer.
Sahana bhavatu sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Akhandamandalakaram Vyaptam yena characharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ajnanatimidandasya jnananjalshalakaya chakshurum militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Eva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Savaram Jangamam Vyaptam Yatkinchit Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapiyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Partaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Sunvanti Divyai Savai Vedai Sangha Padakramopanishadai Gayanti Yam Samaga Jnanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidu sura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha.
So we'll chant the last three verses, which is we haven't started 19.
No, we started 19.
We started.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
Are we agreed on that?
Yeah.
Okay. 17, 18, 19. Pitahamasya jagataha Mata data pitamaha Vedyam pavitramomkaraha Riksamaya judevacha Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi Nivasa sharanam suhrata Prabhava pralaya sthanam Nijanam bijamam vyayam Tapanyamaham varsham Nigannam yatsrujami cha
Amritam chaiva mrityuscha sadasacchahamarjuna.
So Lord Krishna here says, number 19, as the sun, I give heat, I withhold and send forth rain. I am immortality and also death, both existence and non-existence, O Arjuna. So in this chapter, we see that Lord Krishna is actually bringing several things together. So on the one hand, he's talking about um, the divinity in the world. In other words, that in the name and the form, how can we recognize divinity? He is also talking about the transcendental divinity, which means that that which is beyond what we see and what we hear and what we perceive through the senses. Divinity which is beyond the mind and the intellect. So transcendental, immanent. And then in relationship to that, Lord Krishna is describing to us the three ways in which this association between an individual and the divinity can take place. So what are the three ways? So he's already described one, which is, and given a brief introduction about Bhakti Marga, is that through devotion one can connect to the Lord. Then he is also telling us about the Jnana Yajna. So through the intellect one can connect to that divinity. And the third one, of course, is what?
None.
So we talked about Bhakti Marga.
Karma.
Karma. So he is going to describe to us karma in the next two verses in number 20, 21. So in other words, he is bringing all these three different parts of yoga and putting them in relationship to the transcendental way of looking at divinity, and also the way in which we can recognize divinity in the transactional world. That's why I said this is the royal secret, that you can combine all these things together and put them in a proper context, in the right relationship. And if you understand all these things properly, then you will be able to contact divinity here and now in the world, or you can contact divinity through the intellect or through karma. Anything you choose to do, you can, there is no excuse, in other words. You can, there is no excuse of saying, oh, I can't see divinity in the world, right? So he has given us lots of ways in which one can contact this divinity in the world. So in this particular verse, then he is still continuing with, and this is the last one in this series of verses, right, starting from number 14 right up to 19, is giving us various ways in which one can recognize this divinity in the world itself. Okay. So here he is saying, as the sun, I give heat. So here, heat in all its forms is said to be divinity. One can recognize God as this particular way of looking at heat. And here Gurudev says that, you know, this idea that the electricity can rightly be said to be the one which says, I am the heat, I give the heat in the heater. Okay. So heat in the heater and the light in the light bulb, the cold in the refrigerator, and what it means is that electricity, which is flowing through all these equipments, is expressing itself in different ways according to the nature of the appliance. So that appliance will, according to its nature, either give out heat or light or cold, and whatever it is, then it begins to express itself in that way. And here it says the sun becomes the source of all heat for the entire system which we are involved in, or where we are located. And it says, I give the heat in this way to everything which is there on this planet. Then he goes on to say, I withhold and send forth rain. So we have seen that we've seen both these aspects. We have seen, first of all, days and days of sunshine, very hot days, without any rain. Yes, and everybody is saying, when is it going to rain? When is it going to rain? So who was withholding the rain? Lord Krishna was withholding the rain. Now the rain has started, so now he is saying, okay, I also give forth the rain. So he has sent forth the rain now. So you may wonder, but how is Lord Krishna? Is he turning on a tap or doing something which is now making the rain to fall, or is he turning on the heat and turning on the sun, and therefore it is happening like that? What Gurudev is saying here is that the scientific truth at the base of this particular verse is what? In a sense, we can say that this heat, this rain which is coming, and we know the whole cycle of the rain cycle. I'm sure we learned this in primary school, right? All of you remember the rain cycle. So what happens first? It's the sun which shines, and then what does that do? It what you call evaporates the water from the oceans, and it collects itself, and becomes clouds, and then it goes through again. It pours down the rain, and the cycle goes on and on and on. Now, we may say that, okay, now it is actually a natural phenomena. What has that got to do with God? So nothing to do with God. Okay? But here, how do we understand that? We understand that by saying, you remember that Lord Krishna in chapter number 3, 4, 5, he describes how this whole cycle of existence, first of all, was created, and how this cycle of existence is controlled by this spirit of sacrifice. In other words, the Prakriti which we see in front of us is coming from where? It is coming by the creation which took place at the moment of creation. This was actually the result of the combination. If you think in terms of Sankhya and Yoga, it was a combination of Purusha and Prakriti. The unmanifest becoming manifest as this cosmic creation, and within that creation, not only the material aspect of that creation, but also the laws which govern that creation. So in other words, that Lord Krishna is saying that it is that Brahman which is responsible for the creation of what we see in front of us. Not only that, but what governs this whole Prakriti is also set in motion at the time of creation. So not only has he created the machine, but also how the machine is going to work. Okay. Now that machine which has been set in motion is exactly what we are seeing now. In other words, the laws of nature are created with nature itself, and the laws of nature which are now operating, Lord Krishna can say, I withhold the rain and I send it forth. Why? Because I govern the creation through the laws of nature. So what we see in front of us in terms of the creation itself and how we look at creation, one can take this one step further and say, okay, what is it which created the laws of nature? What is it which created the matter in the universe? It is this divinity which has given rise to this creation and the laws of creation, and therefore it belongs to divinity itself. Okay. So in this case, Lord Krishna can claim that I send for this rain and I withhold it, and this is what happens when these laws of nature are put into motion. So I think we got to that point. And now the next thing he says, I am immortality and also death. So now if you think about these two things, on the face of it, it looks like immortality is in complete opposition to death. How can you have two contradictory things in the same sentence? You cannot have death and you can claim that it is immortality as well. So how do we explain it? He says, Gurudev is translating, change is death. And therefore the phrase to be understood is saying, the self is the illuminator of change, itself ever unchanging. So in other words, there are two components which we are now talking about. Okay? And as I keep on saying, apply this to yourself, right? So if I apply to this to myself and I say, actually, I'm speaking this sentence, how will I say it? I will say, I am immortality and I am also death. Now, how do we understand that? So my physical Prakriti aspect of myself will undergo change, and at one point it will disappear out of existence. This body and the mind and the intellect are the aspects of my Prakriti nature. Remember Lord Krishna said, I have a lower nature and a higher nature. So this is now what he's talking about, that each and every one of us has got this. We are in fact composite. In this case, a composite of the higher nature and the lower nature. The lower nature is described as subject to death. The higher nature is described as subject to immortality. Okay. So I can also claim that I am immortal and I'm also death. Why? Because I've got a physical body which is going to disappear, but that which is the essence of myself, which is this immortality, the self, is changeless, unchanging, indestructible. Okay. So here Lord Krishna is pointing out the two aspects of divinity. On the one hand, the material existence, transactionally experienced, and also the immortality, which is the self, which is Brahman. And then he goes on to say, I am the existence and the non-existence. So here, Gurudev is interpreting it in two ways. One, he says that the positive illuminator of both is necessary, both of existence and non-existence. So if I ask you, do you know there is something called XYZ, and you will say, no, I don't know. And then I ask you, do you know your name? And then you immediately say, yes, I know my name. So I know some things, and there are things which I don't know. I know the existence of certain things, and I know the non-existence of other things. What is the common factor in both these things? The common factor is I know. So I know this, and I know that I don't know this. Okay. So here, one interpretation is that the illumination of both these aspects of the mind, the illumination of the existence and the non-existence of anything, is brought into awareness through the illumination of the self. Okay. So when he says, I'm existent and I'm non-existence, which means the illuminator of existence and non-existence is who I truly am. Okay. Is that clear? Sunday morning. So illumination is what, in terms of my personal experience, what does illumination mean in my individual experience is awareness of. Okay. So when we say the ultimate reality, which is Brahman, is the illuminator of everything in existence, in my individuality, that illumination can be translated as I am aware. I'm aware of the existence of something, and I'm also aware of the non-existence of something. So as an illuminator, one can claim I am the existence and the non-existent. And he says the other way is to think about the what you call the manifest and the unmanifest. So in other words, the manifest which is there is that which is manifested as this world of names and forms. The unmanifest is that which is the self. So in the sense, one can take this particular view of of Advaita Vedanta, which says the existence, the true existence is what? The true existence is the self. The self as Satchidanand is the true existence. The rest is non-existence in that sense, because it is the result of Maya. And Maya, in a sense, is non-existence. So he says that I am both these things. I am existence and non-existence. Now, in this way, we have seen so many things with Lord Krishna is telling us how to get in touch with divinity in our day-to-day life. And remember, it's important to be able to do that, because if we don't link this idea that, whatever I'm seeing in front of me is nothing but divinity, then I'm losing one aspect of my sadhana, that I'm losing an opportunity to recognize divinity in the world, and therefore I'm losing the opportunity to develop and grow spiritually. Now, so we were saying that this Lord Krishna is giving us various different ways of connecting with that divinity, and he has given us all different ways of jnana marga, bhakti marga, and now in this next one he's going to talk about the karma marga. So before that, let's see all the things which he has said so far. He says glorifying, worshipping, striving, firm in vows, devotion. So this is you remember he was giving us a contrast between the what you call the Mahatmas and the Mudas. So the Mahatmas and the Mudas. The Mudas are the one who are lost in their own selfish individual ego identity, whereas the Mahatmas have recognized and acknowledged the existence of divinity, and therefore they're constantly striving to experience that divinity. He says those are the ones who are glorifying, worshipping, striving, firm in their vows, and full of devotion. And then he talks about the wisdom sacrifice. He says that through jnana yajna, one can actually also get in touch with divinity. He says in this case it is recognizing me as one. Me as one is this self Brahman, which is the only reality which is in existence. And he says not only that, but it can be recognized as something which is distinct, something which is manifold, something in many different forms as well. So Jnana Yajna is not only about recognizing the self as the oneness in everything, but also in all forms, in all different names and forms, one can recognize that divinity. And then proceeding from that, he gives us the next 4 verses describing so many things where we can get in touch with that divinity. He says, I'm the ritual, I'm the sacrifice, offering, medicinal herb, mantra, clarified butter. He says, I'm the fire, I'm the oblation. And this was compared to the food prayer, Brahma Param Brahma Havi, and so on. It says Brahman is everything. It is a fire. It is a person who is offering. It is the oblation, etc. Everything is Brahman. The food itself is Brahman. And he says those who carry out their actions in the world, recognizing this fact, will attain the realization. Okay. So in that simple food prayer, the whole of the Vedantic philosophy is contained. Not only the goal, but also the means. So remember to say your food prayers 3 times a day. If you remind yourself 3 times a day, this kind of focused way of thinking about divinity, then of course it reminds you what you are supposed to be doing in between. And he says that I am the father, I am the mother, sustainer, grandsire, thing to be known, purifier, Om, Rik, Sama, Yajur, Vedas. I am the goal, supporter, Lord, witness, abode, shelter, friend, origin, dissolution, foundation, treasure house. So he's got a whole list of things where we can think about connected. Okay, and some of the things which are not included in this chapter, in this list, are contained in I think it's the next chapter, whereby he gives a whole list of things whereby he says, I'm this and I'm that. Okay. So, as I was saying, that, it's not Lord Krishna saying that I'm this and I'm that, and therefore we say, Lord Krishna is this and Lord Krishna is that. It has to be personalized. In other words, I can also claim that I'm this and I'm that. Why? Because in essence, we are the same. Okay? So he says, when I'm the goal and the supporter and the treasure house and the seed imperishable, that is also something which is applying to me as well. And I'm the heat, I'm the what you call the rain, the giver of the rain, the holder of the rain, immortality, death, existence, non-existence. So, it may seem like a whole jumble of things which Lord Krishna is talking about, but there is some logic in the way in which he's talking about it. Remember. Okay? And this I described right at the very beginning, saying that we can think of transcendental, imminent. We can think of the three different pathways, and if we try to look at all this, the ways in which it can be contacted, the divinity through the different means, and the goal which is either imminent or transactional. One can begin to understand that God can be connected with in any aspect, in any thought, in any transaction, and that can be done every time, every day, every moment. So now let's go on to the next one, which are the two verses which are going to now, which has changed the rhythm a bit, so that this is a different construction of the shloka, and it means that Lord Krishna is making a particular point here. Okay. So let's chant this one, the two together.
Trividya mam soma paputa papaha.
Trividya mam soma paputa papaha.
Yajnairištva svargatam prartayante.
Yajnairištva svargatam prartayante.
Te punyamasadhya surendra lokam.
Te punyamasadhya surendra lokam.
Ashnanti divyan divi deva bhogan.
Ashyanti divyan divi deva bhogan.
Together.
Trividya mam soma paputa papaha. Yajnairištva svargatam prartayante. Te punyamasadhya surendra lokam. Ashnanti divyan divi deva bhogan.
Etam bhukva swargalokam vishalam.
Etam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam.
Kshine punye matyalokam vishanti.
Kshine punye matyalokam vishanti.
Evam trayi dharma manuprapanna.
Evam trayi dharma manuprapanna.
Gata gatam kama kama labante.
Gadagatam kama kamalabhante.
Together.
Etam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam. Kshine punye matyalokam vishanti. Evam trayi dharma manuprasanna. Gadagatam kama kama labhante.
So these two verses go together, and they are kind of describing the karma marga, and this can be seen as a kind of transactional spirituality. Transactional spirituality, I'll explain in a minute. But these are kind of representing the ways in which karma marga is carried out by the one who is a devotee, but in a different way. So the knowers of the three Vedas, okay, the three Vedas is already described to us. So here Lord Krishna talks about three Vedas, not the four Vedas. Remember, Gurudev explained why the fourth Veda is not there. So the three Vedas are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Samaveda. Atharva Veda is not mentioned. because it's more like a technology application of all these things which are there in the other three Vedas. The drinkers of Soma, this strange drink. Okay. It's not Scotch whiskey, by the way. It's just Soma. This is drinkers of Soma, purified from sin, worshipping me by sacrifices, pray for the heaven, pray for the way to heaven. They reach the holy land, the holy world of the Lord of the gods, and enjoy in heaven the divine pleasure of the gods. Okay. So these are the knowers of the Vedas, and they do various different things to reach the world of the gods and for their enjoyment.
And now he has gone into duality.
Now he has gone into duality. That's why I'm saying that Lord Krishna is covering up all there is the what you call in this documents, legal documents. What do they call it? The small print, right? Emma knows a bit. She's a lawyer, so she will tell us this small print covers everything. There is no loophole. So here there is no loophole. Huh? No. So there is no loophole. No, he has come down into duality. Why? Because this duality is also a valid way of actually getting in touch with divinity. So if you're a dualist, yes, that's fine. If you're a non-dualist, yes, that's fine. If you're immanent, that's fine. If you're transcendental, that's fine. If you're whatever you are, there is no kind of way you can't say, oh, I can't do it. So here we have
just in the previous verse he says, I am death, I am immortality, I am existence, non-existence. So I'm everything.
Yes.
Then he comes and says there is a heaven, and
There
we
is
are all finding the way to the heaven.
right,
So the heaven is different from
So
what
now,
it is.
now what he's doing here is describing a group of people, right? So like we are saying, you remember the four kinds of devotees he was describing. So here he's describing this one type of devotee, which is at the first level. They are in the first kind of primary school, whereby the focus is really what he's talking about here. So they are the knowers of the three Vedas, number one, and they are carrying out various different rituals according to the Vedas. Okay, so the Vedas are giving us the various different rituals according to which we can obtain various things in the world. Not only that, but we can gain higher worlds as well. So how does that work? He says the knowers of the three Vedas and the drinkers of Soma. Now, drinkers of Soma is explained here, but purified from sin. So when they are doing the rituals, what happens? There is some purification which is taking place. Even if the intention of doing the ritual is that I want to gain something out of this. So there is some purification of sin which is going on. Why is that? Now, when we say purification of sin, it means that it's about you remember punya and papa are described as what? How does Gurudev kind of think about that? What is papa?
Anything that takes us towards our
That's right. So anything which takes us to an individual ego identity, that is papa. Anything which takes us towards divinity and liberation is punya. So here they are actually stepping away from the ego in one sense, but still remaining in the ego in the other sense. How are they stepping away from the ego? By acknowledging that there is something higher than themselves as this individual. In other words, as soon as they recognize and acknowledge that there is divinity, then they have actually said that individuality is not the only reality. Beyond the individual reality, there is some other reality, which I say is God. So just by acknowledging that and moving away, they are actually saying that I can begin to move away from this individuality towards that divinity. But they are doing it in a kind of selfish way. This is called selfish spirituality. In a sense, it is to put it in a crude way. This this is superficial spirituality. This is selfish spirituality. Why? Because I am arthi arthati. You remember? Those are the two initial stages of our connection with God. And this means that I want something out of God, and therefore I connect with God and say, can you give me this? And in order for you to give me this, I will carry out this particular ritual. I will offer the prasad, and then in return, you give me this. And the other one is saying, actually, I don't have something which I want, and because I want it, I'm coming to you because you're the provider of everything. Okay, you are the one who gives everything to everyone, and I wish to obtain this thing, and therefore I'm praying for you to give me this which I'm lacking in my life, and I'm carrying out this ritual. I'm offering this prasad, and therefore you can give me this thing which I'm seeking.
Is then the purification part of that? Because the rest of it is all selfish. Is the devotion? Is that
That's right.
the purification?
That's right. So that is the one which is leading to partial purification. It is not leading to complete purification. But like I said, that acknowledgement of divinity in itself, right? Acknowledging that there is something higher than me, there is divinity, and connecting with divinity even when it is for self-interest, right, gives some level of purification. Then he says that, purified from sin, worshipping me by sacrifices. See, again, the sacrifice is taking place. The worshipping of the Lord is taking place through the ritual and through the attitude and a certain amount of intention that is taking place. And he says, they are praying for the way to heaven. Now you remember there are things on earth which we desire, and there are things in heaven which we desire, but desire is a desire which is the egocentric desire. I want this in the world, I want this beyond the world in the heaven. So when I say I want something and then I do the ritual and do whatever sacrifice needs to be done, then I'm doing it for myself. And he says that having done this, what happens? They reach the Holy Land. They reach, not the Holy Land, Holy Land is the holy world of the Lord of the gods, and enjoy in heaven the divine pleasure of the gods. So what are they looking for? They want to say, okay, I want pleasure in my transactional world. And if I go and have a nice cup of coffee or tea or have a cake and all this some kind of thing, which are sense pleasures, which are available in the transactional world, I can scale it up.
That's not really asking for the way to moksha.
No,
That's not
that's
really
what I'm saying.
liberation at all.
That's what I'm saying. And that is why it's called superficial spirituality, because it is centered on what I want. And I don't want moksha. I'm looking for pleasure and scaling it up to the heavenly world and saying, if I'm getting this pleasure here, the pleasure which is available in heaven is 1,000,000 times more, and therefore let me go and enjoy my pleasures which I'm enjoying here in a much, much, much more intense way. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for liberation. They're not going to get liberation either, because it explains in the next verse why that is so. So,
Ramesh, are you going to describe what is meant by heaven, what is meant by the world of the Lord's?
Yeah. Okay. So I will explain that. So having done that, they having enjoyed, so they come to the world of the gods. They having enjoyed the vast heaven world, when their merits are exhausted. In other words, that through the sacrifices, through this kind of rituals which I'm doing, I begin to deposit some merits in my merit bank, in my karma bank. In my karma bank, all these merits are accumulating, and I say, okay, I'm going to call in this deposit, and I'm going to go to heaven and spend all that merits which are there. As soon as the merits are finished, time to go back. Okay, so they, having enjoyed the vast heaven world, when their merits are exhausted, enter again the world of mortals, thus abiding by the injunction of the three Vedas, desiring objects of desires, they attain to the state of going and returning samsara. This is the state of going, gata, agatam, going and coming back. So where are they going? They're going to the world of, what you call
Heaven.
heaven,
Yes.
and then coming back. Now, what is this heaven and hell? Okay. Hell, he doesn't mention here. He mentions
Maybe
heaven.
this is now.
Maybe this is heaven. But, heaven, what does it mean? So there are two kind of interpretation. In other words, that we can think that there are actual dimensions of existence, okay, which are not available to here in this dimension. And of course, physics now, you say, they acknowledge that there are 11 dimensions of existence. Now, they are not available to us because we are kind of locked up in this reality, in this dimension. But maybe, sometime in the future, we'll be able to travel between the two various dimensions. So one can say these are lokas. So how many lokas are there?
14 lokas.
14 lokas, okay. So there are 7 lokas above and 7 lokas down, including Earth, which is at the right at the top of the 7 lokas down. Now, these can be said to be dimensions of existence, and therefore there are ways in which we can think about each dimension has got a certain experiential reference point. In other words, at the highest point, in the Brahmaloka, there is complete enjoyment of all the senses. In the lowest, there is suffering, which is, right to the extreme. Think of suffering in this world, and think of this suffering multiplied by 1,000,000. Then you reach the lowest loka. I don't know what the loka is. I never remember those lokas. But if you think about that pain and suffering multiplied by 1,000,000, you go to the lowest loka, and imagine that the pain, that pleasure and happiness multiplied by 1,000,000, you reach Brahmaloka. So pain on the one hand, suffering, and pleasure on the other hand, which takes you, which is experiencing the highest heaven. Now, that is one interpretation, that there are actually physical locations with different dimensions, whatever you can think of, where then the subtle body and the causal body travel through these dimensions and reach those dimensions whereby they are then experiencing their merits in those lokas, and when those are exhausted, they come back to the plane of this material existence, this earthly plane. And the other way of thinking about it is that it is here and now. There are no kind of lokas there, but it is the inner world which begins to experience itself as heaven. Okay, so one can think of, yes, heaven and hell are here and now. It is your state of existence and the state of your mind which determines whether you're living in hell or living in heaven. How is that state of mind going to change? It is going to change through either ego identification and attachment and expectation and all the things which go with it, which will take you deeper and deeper into sorrow and suffering. On the other hand, with the purification of the mind and the ego individuality, the purification of the me and the mind from this existence, it takes you higher and higher and higher towards experiencing the happiness which is available here. So it could be interpreted as a location, or it could be interpreted as a state of consciousness. Okay, so you can experience heaven here and now. How is that? When you are in that state of complete contentment, sthita prajna, and you experience that heaven here and now. It's not that you have to travel somewhere into a different dimension to experience it. So now he is saying that this is the way in which some relationship is there between you and God, and that relationship is based on my personal need. That personal need is about what I can attain in this transactional world on this plane, and that personal need is also based or could be based on something which I want to attain in the higher planes. So you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this ritual on a daily basis. I'm going to carry out this puja every day, asking the Lord, give me some merits, give me some merits. I'm going to collect this merit. When I go to heaven, I will spend this and enjoy myself. When those merits have been spent, then I will come back. So this is what he's saying. Coming and going, coming and going. This is samsara. So there is no liberation here. Why is there no liberation? Because right up to Brahmaloka he is going, or she is going, and then coming back again. And this he mentioned in the last chapter as well. You remember that. This is called Kramamukti. Kramamukti is that, you go up to Brahmaloka, or you go up to a Pitruloka, you go up to this loka, that loka, and then you come back here because now the merits have been exhausted.
People who are actually doing the rituals, they're not aware of this.
Are they not aware?
Who questions it?
No, nobody is questioning this. It's that I am sitting in this ritual for a particular purpose. Okay, how many of you actually do ritual on a daily basis? Some kind of ritual which you do on a daily.
Sitting in front of the altar is a ritual, and I do it.
Yeah, so this is puja, this is worship, right? But what I'm saying, you then have a sankalpa, right? Whenever you do a ritual or you do something, there is always some kind of thinking behind it. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this puja? Right? And that intention itself defines what you are doing that puja for. Okay? And there are 1,000 things which you can take the sankalpa for doing that particular worship. Now, it could be that you are saying that actually I want to enjoy the heaven. That becomes a specific intention. And the rituals and the practices which are described in the karma kanda of the Vedas are all these different rituals which are meant to give you all these things, right? So you remember in Kathopanishad, what's the name of the father? Nachiketa's father. Anyway, there is a Brahman who is making sacrifices, and he's saying that, okay, this is going to lead me towards higher worlds and going to get me to these heavens. So then the boy Nachiketas is asking him, why are you giving these old cows and all these old things, which you don't require? You're giving them to the gods. Why don't you give him all the healthy cows and all the healthy things which are there? Instead of that, the father gets very annoyed with the boy, and he says, okay. And the boy says what? He says, why don't you give me in the sacrifice? So the father gets annoyed and says, okay, I give you into sacrifices. And then the whole Kathopanishad, which is such a beautiful dialogue between the Lord of Death and this little boy, Nachiketas. Amazing dialogue, just like Arjuna and Krishna. It shows you exactly. So, Nachiketa is so determined that he wants to know the truth about this. He wants to know the truth about the ultimate truth. And Lord Yama gives him various different, ways of enticing him to say, no, I will give you everything. I'll give you a kingdom. I will give you 1,000 wives. I will give you this, that, and the other. And he says, I don't want anything from you. All I want is the ultimate truth. So it's a beautiful dialogue. So here again, the sacrifice is going on, and he is looking for something, right, for himself, and that's why he doesn't want to get rid of what he owns in this transactional world, which he finds precious. Okay, the healthy cows are precious. The cows who are old and dying, he wants to give them into the sacrifice. So he wants to have what is here. He wants to have the cake and eat it as well. In other words, that's why Nachiketa is getting annoyed with him. So now what happens is that he's making this sacrifice, doing this ritual because he wants something out of it, right? So when you're sitting in the puja, right, if you're following the ritual because they are the knowers of the Vedas, they know exactly what ritual to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and for what purpose to do it, right? And because they know it, they do the sacrifices knowing that they are going to attain to the higher worlds. So they are doing the sacrifices. For what purpose? The actual key point is what is the intention and the attitude behind the ritual and the puja you're doing. That determines everything. So Arti, Arthati, and Jignasu, and then Jnani. So he says Jnani is the highest, whereby he's not interested in any of these things of going to heaven or coming back or doing this, that, or the other. I'm not interested in anything in the transactional world. I'm not interested in anything which goes even beyond the transaction. All I want is to know myself and to become one with Brahman. That's all he is interested in, nothing else.
But can you perform the ritual without the intent? So I was thinking that if you do your puja, but you just do your puja out of devotion as opposed to asking for something.
No. This we
Because
are
you
talking.
can perform the
No, that
ritual.
we are talking about something else. This is talking about the Vedic rituals, right? It's not talking about worship in the sense of doing a puja for the sake of doing the puja, right? But even when you're doing the puja, okay, you are doing just out of devotion, but there is a reason why you're doing that puja, right? Whether it is, glorifying the Lord, whether it is kind of connecting with the Lord, there is some intention which is still there, right? So if you say, I'm doing puja on a daily basis, I'm doing mantra japa on a daily basis, I'm doing contemplation of the Lord on a daily basis, you may be doing it because you want to purify the mind. Or you may want to do it because you want to cultivate devotion in your heart. Or you may be doing it because you want something out of that particular puja. And say, I'm doing this puja because I want my daughter to get to pass through her exams, and whatever it is. It can still be done with that some kind of intention, or it can be done for the sake of devotion itself. This is not what we are talking. We are talking about the Vedic rituals, which he is saying they are the knowers of the Vedas. So they are actually focusing primarily on the ritual itself and saying this ritual is going to get me this, that, and the other. They're not interested in liberation. They want to attain a high state of pleasure or happiness, even in this world or beyond this world, into the higher worlds. And then when those merits are exhausted, they come back. So, this is one way of kind of thinking. Why do you think Lord Krishna is telling us this?
So that we can discriminate between the two.
Yeah, so you can discriminate between the four different approaches to divinity, right? So you can say, actually, I am only interested in divinity, although I know that there is God. I know that God is existing. I'm relating or engaging with God only for my own sake. Or you can go to the highest and say, I'm engaging with this divinity for the sake of revelation and liberation. So he says, yeah, but just be careful when you're doing all these things. What is the true intention behind each and every one of these things? So he is described to us the Bhakti Marga, and he's going to elaborate on that much further now. And he is described to us the Jnana Marga, whereby how you can contemplate and see divinity right in front of you, here and now, okay, in all the material existence. And also, in chapter 6, it told us how we can get to the highest meditation, whereby we can identify with the self and be the self. So, there is it is a complete book of self-unfoldment.
Well, he's just saying that you can reach me at any level that you are.
That's right.
Right? There's no hierarchy, though, is there? I mean,
there is no
hierarchy. It
hierarchy.
seems to be a criticism if you put the hierarchy in place.
Yeah. So as Advaita Vedantins, for us, what is the highest state of that divinity? The highest state would be Aham Brahmasmi. Okay, it is expressed in that Mahavakya, saying Aham Brahmasmi. That is the highest according to Advaita Vedanta. Okay, according to other methods. So that's why I keep on saying, we are looking at it from a specific point of view. If you look at it from the Madhvacharya philosophy of Vaita, then the highest realization is what? Is Krishna consciousness. That you become totally conscious of God in all its different manifestations, and your only, practice is doing seva for the Lord. He is not asking for liberation. He is not asking for oneness, to become one with God. There is nothing like that. In fact, he says that is blasphemy. How can you become one with God? So for them, that is the highest, and the rest is blasphemy. Blasphemy is a strong word, but what I'm saying is that other things are kind of recede into the background. That my primary, engagement with the Lord is that I recognize that there is God, there is me as a devotee. The two are ever separate. They're not going to come together in any conceivable way I can think of. My only purpose is devotion to God. In all the ways I can do it, whether it is through seva, whether it's through chanting, whether it's through singing kirtan and bhajan, etc. That's the only way. I'm not interested in liberation. But from the point of view of Advaita Vedanta, there is some privilege which is given to the highest state of becoming one with Brahman.
So can it be seen that first one is that attain feet of the Lord?
Yeah.
And your outline is to be able to be near the feet of the Lord, and then the second is to become one with the Lord.
That's right. So this is what Gurudev says in his commentary in Kenopanishad. He says, there are three types of Vedanta. So when we talk about Vedanta, we have to specify which Vedanta we're talking about. So is it Dvaita Vedanta? Is it Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, or it is Advaita Vedanta? So he says our first stop is Madhvacharya's ashram, whereby we say, I am here and you are there as God, and I relate to you in this dualistic way. We are going to ever remain separate. He says then once the purification of the mind comes about, you go to the next ashram, which is Ramanuja's ashram, whereby you say, I am part of the whole. In other words, that I am still acknowledging that there is divinity within me, but I cannot become one with that eternal Brahman, which is that I am part of that total reality. Then the third one, we go to Shankaracharyaji's ashram, and then we are taught that there is no difference between you and God. There is no difference between you and Brahman. It is only, the difference is only in what? The difference is only in the condition. Your conditioning is body, mind, intellect. Ishvara's conditioning is the whole creation, and Brahman, there is no conditioning, unconditioned consciousness. So those are the kind of ways in which Gurudev kind of describes the journey, that you can approach the feet of the Lord. Then you start saying that actually I am one with you, but I'm not the totality, I'm just a divine spark. And then you go on to say, actually there is no difference between you and me, we are all one. So the reason why, again, coming back to this idea, is that he's describing this to us because he's saying that we have to acknowledge that there are various different relationships with divinity. You can either look at it from this point of view, that the knowers of the Vedas and those who are focused on the rituals, they will attain some result. Okay? And that result will take them to certain heavens and bring them back. Now, Gurudev puts it in a very strong manner. He says that the pitiable disgust which Lord feels for such men and their unintelligence seeking for the finite is clearly expressed when he concludes how this ritualist, abiding by the injunction of the three Vedas, desiring desires, they repeatedly come and go. Okay? And this passage reminds us more of severe criticism the Lord had raised earlier against the pursuit of desire-born ritualisms.
Ramesh, there seems to be an apparent contradiction with chapter 8.
Yeah.
Because in chapter 8,
yeah,
it very specifically said through the very complicated path of Brahma Mukti, you reach Brahmaloka, and then from Brahmaloka,
yeah,
of course, when with Brahma's guidance, you can actually still get liberated.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, it's a very strong statement saying whatever you do,
yeah,
you have to come back.
Yeah, yeah.
So it seems to be a mismatch.
Yeah, so here maybe he's talking about the heaven world. Now, when he talks about the heaven world, he is talking as Svargaloka. Svargaloka and Brahmaloka, two different destinations. Okay, Brahmaloka is really much. Yeah.
Highest loka.
Yeah, yes, that is the highest loka. So Svargaloka is maybe somewhere in between there.
Because if you're in Brahmaloka, while you're in that loka, you can attain.
Then you can attain. That's why
Yes.
I'm saying Kramamukti. So you can go, step by step process rather than direct path. So it is like if you take a flight to Hong Kong, then you make various different stops, right? And then you go to, or you can take a direct flight. The direct flight or the stopovers. So this is the one he's talking about in last chapter was stopovers. But he's saying the ultimate destination is Brahmaloka, not Svargaloka. Svargaloka is different.
Divine memory.
Yeah.
Divine memory.
Yeah.
So why have the Vedas then? If they just divert you in the wrong direction.
I was going to say, why have demigods as well?
So
distraction. And what is the purpose?
Yeah, but it is a distraction from a particular point of view. See, if you say my ultimate destination is Mumbai, then everything which I do in going here, there, and everywhere, that becomes a distraction, right? But if you say, actually, I just want to go to Dubai, I don't want to go to Mumbai, then thinking about Mumbai becomes a distraction. You see what I mean? So to every person, horses for horses. In other words, that for every person, there will be a certain level of understanding, a certain level of spiritual development. And for them, simple bhakti could be one way, or it could be an intense, meditation on the self. And there is a whole spectrum in between, right?
It almost feels like they're testing you. That you're going through these, as you say, various stops.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're not going to achieve that because you've just been distracted.
No. I think I look at it from this point of view that there is a certain amount of purity which is available to you as you come into existence in this world. Okay? If the purity which is available to you already is very high, then you immediately go into Jnanamarga. You immediately go into you become a Jignasu and you can attain the highest knowledge. Now, you can come into existence in this human form without much purity, okay? And he says that, there are these other three kinds of people who have no conception of the divine. Okay? So, in other words, what I'm saying is that each and every individual on this planet has reached a certain level of spiritual maturity. Depending where you are, you will connect with that divine or not connect with the divine according to that particular development which is there. Okay. So for us, this now becomes a distraction because why? We are looking for things which is of the highest existence and the highest bliss. Therefore, any kind of ritual, now we have to look at the ritual from a different point of view and say, does this ritual actually contribute to my ultimate destination? If it does, then that's fine. If it doesn't, stay away from it. But you see, Lord Krishna is not discounting any faith. He is not discounting any approach. He says, whatever way you approach me, I will increase that faith. So, it may appear as a distraction, but in the end,
All options.
Yeah, all the options are open. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it is very wide in its approach to acknowledging the different types of human beings and the different approaches they may take, and also the different destinations which they can reach. So there's a complete picture of all different pathways to the highest. Okay, so we'll just stop there for the time being. And of course, the next verse is a famous verse, and it is also something which is said to be right at the center of the Bhagavad Gita. Center in the sense that it comes right in the middle of the 701 stanzas. Actually, it doesn't. What Gurudev is saying is the 360th stanza. So it's not right in the middle, but we can think of it as central to the whole philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. And how does that actually work? It's an interesting take on yoga chain. Okay. So we'll continue now. I think next week I'm not here. Maybe the week after we'll see. But you'll get the message on the WhatsApp. So let's conclude with the prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kashchid Dukha Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.
Hari Om, everyone. First of all, next week we don't have classes, and as Ramesh said, we will post about the following week's class, that is August 20. Today is 26. August 26, whether we have class or not, we will post it on the WhatsApp group. So please make sure you're on the WhatsApp group for the Gita class. If you are not on that, please make sure you give your telephone number to Durai, and that will inform you when the next class is. But also, as you are probably already aware, Swami Swarupananda, who is the head of Chinmaya Mission worldwide, is going to be visiting London from September 13th until September 22nd. He's going to give a series of evening talks as well as morning talks. He's going to conduct retreats for the youth. And he is also going to have a festival of Hanuman, which is happening on Saturday, September 22nd. It's a whole day event. So can you please make sure to take many of these? It's just not for you alone. Yeah. I want you to take as many as you can and distribute it to all your friends, because we are all benefiting from this. It's just that if they get this information, yesterday, in fact, we had gone to a place where there was a Gita happening, and someone was saying, like, look, it's good that this message is all there, but we don't even know that this message is being given out. So if we can just inform people that there is this opportunity for them to learn, that is all that we are trying to do here. Okay, so whether they want the message or not, it's up to them. But let's raise the awareness that there are opportunities for people to learn and benefit from it. So please take multiple copies and spread it.